Okay, I guess we're going to start with our first presenter. I'd like to introduce Will Schroeder from Kitware, and he's going to be talking about open source business models. So if you give a nice round of applause to Kitware.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. This actually is a very timely event because this morning I was officially notified by one of my feeds that Red Hat Linux, Red Hat is now a $1.13 billion company in revenue. So anyone that thinks you can't make money with open source, maybe should look at the Red Hat model. So it's great to be here. I'm sort of the warm-up act. Later on, Bill Hoffman, who's one of the CMake developers. A lot of people have heard CMake, one of the open source tools we developed at our company. Will be speaking, and then after that, Luis Ibanez, who actually teaches an open source software practices course, RPI. He's been teaching for how long? It's like 5 years, 4 years? 5. Yeah, so he'll be speaking, and he's a great speaker. So I'll warm you guys up the best I can. Just before I get going into it too much, I'm going to speak about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes of questions or so. Just want to give you a sense of where we're coming from, so you understand, what it is what the experiences I bring to bear. We're a company just up the road here in Clifton Park. We're about 110 employees roughly now. We were founded in '98. We actually all used to work at GE Research as scientists, if you will, computational scientists. And we developed in '93. I wrote a book with a couple other guys, Ken Martin and Bill Lorenzen, on visualization, meaning 3D graphics combined with data to make pretty pictures. That book had a little CD in it, and the CD was BSD licensed and a community formed, and it grew rapidly, and in 1998 we said, we want to try something different here. And so that grew from the 5 founders, grew to this 110-person company. And we've never had any, investing, no debt. We've bootstrapped it the whole way, so we're 100% profitable from day one. The thing that's a little bit different about us is we're very good software people. Well, maybe I'm not anymore, but the staff is really good. And but we're also in the sciences, so we do a lot of computational sciences. We have a passion for software. That's what we like to do. But by the way, computational physics or computational chemistry or climate modeling or whatever, we do those things as almost an excuse to do software. So it makes us a bit of a different sort of company. And bottom line is, the business model is very straightforward. I think most people understand it now. If you go to a tax accountant, or you see a lawyer, or you hire a tutor, those are all sort of comparable business models to what we do. So, the tax code, it's all out there. Go to the websites, whatever, from New York State, federal government. If you want to read the thousands of pages, you can do that. No problem. You can do the taxes yourself. Same with legal codes. Same with being part of in a tutoring relationship. The educational materials are often out there; they're accessible. But we go to experts, people that can sort of narrow our focus down to the things that matter, whether it's business, tax, legal issues, or gaining knowledge. And that's sort of what we do too. We develop tools, very complicated scientific computing tools, and then we work with our customers to sort of integrate these tools into their workflow. And I'll talk more about that. But fundamentally, we're providing services and support, doing a little bit of consulting, but really collaborative R&D, which means engaging with scientists to develop technology, and then integrating that technology into customers' workflow is really what we do. We've fooled around with commercial products, tried to build some sort of proprietary top pieces on top of the open source framework. That's never worked for us. It's not part of our culture. We really have a very pure open source model. Probably the purest model I've seen, quite frankly. We'll talk about that more. So, just to give you another quick sense of what we do, everything we do revolves around software process. Bill's going to talk a little bit about this, I'm sure. Our CMake and CTest and C-Dash tools are all about software process testing, cross-platform build, packaging, and all that sort of thing. So everything revolves around the software core, and then around that core we have sort of scientific expertise areas: medical imaging, computer vision, scientific data management, big data. I know there's a couple data scientists in here. And we do a lot of visualization, high-performance computing type stuff. So this is give you a sense. And here's a couple pretty pictures to show you kind of stuff that we generate. I mean, I've got a million slides I could show you, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to focus on this too much. So that's who we are. You get a sense of where we're coming from. Before we get into the business model, just sort of some simple, basic reminders of what business is about, which is you offer something of value, you somehow get the word out to people who might want that something of value, and then you execute some transaction. Very simple, exchange corn for fish, if you will. The traditional business model, which most people are used to, really consists of sort of these steps, which is identifying or creating something of value. Typically, it's creating intellectual property, if you believe in that concept, whether it's a patent or some sort of copyrighted material or a trademark, and the list goes on and on. You then, with this cool idea, you find the investors or the vulture capitalists to sort of fund your idea and to bring it to fruition. Obviously, you work hard. Marketing and sales is a big part of these organizations because you're trying to get the word out, get people to buy your stuff. And then you develop typically an exit strategy, which may be, I'm going to be acquired by somebody for a lot of money. That's the hope. Just to remind us again what intellectual property is meant, some people define it as. These four major items are what we are typically talking about. But we really, in our business model, we focus more on services. And that's what I'm going to talk about through the bulk of the presentation here. And just a reminder where the origins of IP come from. It's Clause 8 of the U.S. Constitution, which says, promote the progress of science and useful arts, securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to the respective writings and discoveries. So we're granting for a short period of time a monopoly, so you can make money on this, and then eventually it goes to basically the public domain. Now, the meaning of short time, limited times has been growing. We can blame Mickey Mouse for a lot of this stuff because Disney doesn't want to give up their copyrights and things on things like Mickey Mouse. But that's another conversation entirely. So finding investors, again, part of the traditional model, you have to go through, there's a family and friends plan, where you make enemies out of your friends ultimately and possibly cause family issues to occur. You try and find rich guys that have nothing better to do than throw their money at you. These people are good because they often have a Rolodex, which allows you to make connections to people who can bring you money or business. Venture can be a good thing if you don't mind giving up most of your company to a bunch of business guys that want to exit in 3 years. And there are public funding avenues like SBIR and STTR. Small Business Innovative Research is a program that the U.S. government has set up where every federal agency that does R&D has to set aside a few percent, 2 or 3% of money devoted strictly to small business. So if you go to the DoD website or the NSF website or you go to the DOE or whatever, you'll find an extensive SBIR program where it's a phased program, starts off like $150,000. If you win, it's competitive. Maybe 1 in 10 proposals will be awarded. If you succeed in the phase 1, it goes to phase 2, which can be up to $1 million over 2 years. So it's a slow way to get money. We've done this, but it's a nice way because you really don't owe anything back. Working hard, we know all about that. One of the big things about working hard is that guys in the management ranks like me realize that what makes things really work well is when you hire incredibly good people that are very productive. So working hard often translates to find the right team and put it together. And, that sort of sounds simple on face value, but the reality is it's very hard to find good people. And one of the advantages of the open source world is you have a community around you. And that community often is a breeding ground for people, and you can identify from mailing lists and technical exchanges who the really good people are, and you can bring them on board. So There's a lot to be said for these extended communities, which are used to prove out and find the really good people. Another interesting phenomena that we've seen is that people that sell products, that are more product-oriented, often have staffs of sales and marketing people that compose maybe 50 to 60% of their company. Right? So at Kitware, we're roughly 110 people. We really have no sales and marketing, zero. We have 3 communications people, and what they do is create web pages, they write press releases, they help us put together emails or write blogs, do all the things you need to do to communicate, but they're not actively doing the marketing. So our company is very technology focused. Our open source communities do a lot of the work for us because people start using our stuff, they find it really useful. Management says, oh, what is this great stuff you're using? They tell them, well, it's this crazy open source stuff, and there's support available for this company called Kitware. They come knocking on our door. So most of our business comes not from us seeking customers, but rather customers coming to us, which is really nice because we suck at marketing. We're really bad at it. A lot of people are in this whole thing just to make money, get out, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, nothing at all. Some people want to develop a technology and move on to the next and the next and the next. That's a great thing. But, and I think that's something that in the conventional business model is easier to do because you're selling IP, it's a clean transaction. When you're an open source community, an open source business, it's service oriented. So what you sell, you don't really own anything. What you have are employees, you have a community, you have relationships, you have trust. That's hard to sell. So open source businesses, I think, are a little bit trickier to engage with in terms of transferring ownership and acquisition. The challenges of the traditional model is that the ideas are cheap, raising capital is hard, hiring is really hard, and marketing is really expensive. So we're going to try and get around that with a different model, which we're calling the open source model right now. And there's other motivations too for this model, which these are sort of flat to 10,000 feet to look down at the sort of the software world. We're finding that in the old days you would write a program, Microsoft Word, whatever, some custom piece of software that was pretty easy to sell because it had a very fixed purpose that was very widely used. But in our area, which is scientific computing, technical computing, very rarely can you sell a single piece of software and be done with it. More often than not, it is customer has a need, you have some tools. Let's work together to integrate these tools into your environment. So there's a lot of support and consulting going on to sort of make that happen. And that's really where the money in the software world is. It's in services. It's not in product sales. And I think that's becoming even more true. We also know that software is very costly in terms of maintenance. So somebody's going to pay someone somewhere to maintain it, or you're going to find a community to pick up the maintenance. Today in our environment, technology is becoming incredibly complicated. We have people that need to know how to build software, how to write software, they have to know about algorithms or data science, or they need to know about graphics and visualization. They need to know about Linux and Windows and Apple OS. So there's all these cross-cutting technology things. You've got to build extended teams. And as you do that, and if you start finding yourselves facing the intellectual property wall of, I need a license for this, I need a license for that. Can I collaborate with this guy? Can I collaborate with that guy? That just bogs everything down. You've got to get rid of that because any of these barriers to collaboration do not scale as the projects get bigger. So it's really important to be able to free yourself of all that sort of IP barrier stuff. We also find that the software developed in open source communities is extremely agile, at least the way we do it. If you need something done quickly, the community often can rise to the challenge incredibly fast. We've seen cases of bug fixes in open source communities that happen in minutes. It's astounding. So we're not waiting for 6 months to cut the next release and sell our product. It's happening as it's needed. It's fantastic.